beard's gone. Old photo, so I'll apologise for that already if you don't recognise me from the photograph. I can't prevent disasters happening to any business or anybody because that's not my remit really. I'm a financial advisor, and what I'm going to do today is just tell you some of the potential pitfalls that could occur in your business, but it's not really about you getting sued and you should have D&O insurance. It's not about you driving your car and having an accident. It's not even about somebody breaking into your office and you should have office insurance or home insurance that covers your office. It's all about people and what can happen to people. And the most important thing is to look at your business, and if anything happens to people, what the hell will happen to my business? That's basically what the talk's about. Briefly, I set up Buxton Beresford in 2011, so I've been doing this for a while, but I've been in financial planning since 1992, always in the Farnham area. So I've got clients all the way from southwest London all the way down to Bournemouth and even Chepstow and places like that. So it just depends where my clients were, who they were attached to, that I've picked them up as clients, but provide them with a service that I think is so fantastic they stay with me throughout thick and thin. That's me on the left, as you probably recognise, but the guy on the right is Andy Wire. I've known Andy for quite a long time. He's ex-forces and I'm ex-forces. He was in the RAF and I was in the Royal Marines. So there is a little bit of a hierarchy there. Andy lives on the south coast, and that's why he looks old and gnarled, because of the sun effect on his face and body. Just talk to me if you need to do anything about planning. Just have a chat with me, and I'll tell you what I understand about the financial planning process, and if I can help you, I'll help you. Obviously, if then you subsequently want to become a client, then by all means just dig out. It's great. I'll give you a good service. So that's me. More than 25 years in the business graduate. I studied at North East London, which was a polytechnic at the time, and now it's a university, which is, I don't know whether that adds any kudos to my degree or not, but I'll take it. And I got a great degree. It's called a Desmond, and that's just, it's like a drinking man's degree, but it's a good solid grounding to a business life. And I've also studied what is called Level 4, which is effectively degree standard for the financial planning process, and so I'm well enough qualified to advise clients, and because of the experience as well, that means I've come across most things that might happen within people's lives and people's businesses. So the talk is the main thing that you should be doing is, the top one is planning for the future, is pushing your business forward and creating things that you want to succeed in. So really you're concentrating on your day-to-day stuff. You're trying to build your turnover and your profitability by keeping your expenses down. And you're trying to acquire clients through marketing and sales and making life great because your business is doing well. So that's what people tend to look at, is what's happening today, what's happening next week, what's happening in 6 months. And then most people will have a 5-year plan, and that will be broken down. Well, that's 5 years, but 3 years we want to be here, and in 1 year we want to be here. So that's what you should be doing, and creating the processes to drive yourself forward to hit your targets for 5 years, and obviously what do you want to do? What do you want to do in life? In business to create the best for your life. But that's the business itself. But the business is going to be affected by what could happen to the people within your business. And that could be yourselves, it could be your employees, and it could be your shareholders. So you've got to look at what would happen if one of us died, what would happen if one of us got a serious illness like cancer, stroke, heart attack, all the big five that most people will be affected by if they just don't keel over and die or crash their car. And what you've got to look at is, if anything happened to me, if anything happened to another major shareholder, so it could be your wife, it could be somebody else in the business, what happens if the guy who goes out there and does all the technical stuff, or the guy who goes out and sells stuff for me, what happens if something happened to him? And would my business be affected? So that's what I want you to just think about now and say, well, right, who have I got in my business? It might be, well, I am the business, but if anything happened to me, then what happens to, or what impinges on other people within my life? So if I'm the main wage earner, I'm earning loads of money, but if anything happened to me, then the knock-on effect is A, B, and C. So you've got to take that into account, and then you convert that into, well, what happens if Joe, who's my fantastic salesperson, goes and drives his car into a brick wall? That means, well, he's not selling anymore, and that means my turnover is just going to go like that. So you've got to think about that sort of effect on your business, because the most important thing is your business and your livelihood, and how it is going to be affected by the things that happen to other people. So it should be business financial protection, really, because it's not protecting your business as such, but it's protecting the finances of the business. So it's, well, what would happen if something happened to me? I've taken out a big loan, and if anything happens to me, the bank's going to come to me or to the business and say, we want our money back, please, because you're the main earner has suddenly had a heart attack, stroke, or just died. And so that means that the business has got a debt that they want to satisfy, and that might mean they'll come after the business assets. But if you've taken out a loan, then with an SME, normally there is a director's guarantee, and so they will come after your assets. So if anything happens to you, you've got a 100,000 loan, for argument's sake, and that the company doesn't have the assets, so therefore they'll go to your assets, and that will be your house normally, or your investments, or whatever else you've got that's available. And if your wife and kids are still living in your house, then that creates problems for your family. And it's not just death, it is serious illness. If you have a heart attack and you can't work, and suddenly the bank knows that something's wrong, then they're going to come after you just the same way. So this is the first thing I've talked about, which is the debt. If you're creating a debt because you've got a business loan, then a lot of businesses will have debt, and it's not necessarily you've taken out a loan. It could be an overdraft, it could be a credit card debt, which might be small, but it still could cause problems, or it could be the fact that you've put money into the business and created a director's loan account. So you start your business, you put 50 grand into your business, the company owes you 50 grand. So if anything happens to you, then your creditors, the people who you have willed your shares to, will come back to the company and say, we want our money back, but it's not there. It is still owed, but if the company hasn't got the assets, then again, it comes back to, well, what's the effect on your family? You've given 50 grand of your hard-earned money into your business, and unfortunately something's happened to you, the business still owes you the money, or the business owes your family the money if anything happened to you. So that's the first thing. Debt definitely has increased a lot since 2011, and many businesses don't plan how to repay the debt, and it can stick around for a long time. And vast majority of people don't cover By cover, what we mean is life insurance of some sort, so that if anything happens to you, then that debt will be repaid. I've just spoken about guarantors. If you're a major shareholder and something happens to you, then what happens to the other shareholders' interest? If you own 49% of the business and somebody else owns 51% of the business, then if anything happens to you, then they're a majority shareholder, but you're not doing anything in the business. So what's going to happen to the business? It's going to fail, probably. But you're a shareholder, and dividends, if you're going to declare dividends are still going to be paid to the other shareholders. So one shareholder's beavering away, still earning, the other one's in bed, having had a heart attack or a stroke, and yet when they declare dividends, they've still got to give dividends to the person in bed. Yeah, and so there's that creates an issue in terms of equality within the business. Again, I've gone through that, but this is basically saying that the vast majority of businesses have some kind of debt, and the biggest one is obviously business loans, where people have taken on a loan from the bank. A key person. There's a number of different things about it with business protections. One of them is protecting your shareholding. So basically, it's what happens if something happens to a shareholder. The other one is what happens to a key person. So that could be anybody. So it could be yourself, because you've got the skills, knowledge, and the tenacity and the experience of running a business. If anything happens to you, then the business may well fold. It may well suffer dramatically anyway. But the other one is if you've got somebody who's got you are the directors and the shareholders, but you employ somebody in a technical capacity, and they are helping you drive the business because of their knowledge and their experience. Then if anything happens to them, then that key person could have a dramatic effect on the profitability or even the life of your business. Because if you suddenly turn around and say, well, crumbs, Joe was giving me all this valued experience and I don't know where to get it from, you've either got to get somebody else, or you've got to gear up the what do you call it? The education of the people who are in the business to take that over. There's a cost there. So you've got to look at the costs of the replacing somebody in your business, which is what key man is. So these are the people it could be. So the guy who's running the finances in your back office, you don't realise how much you rely on somebody. It's just even like bookkeeping. Yeah, I'm doing my bookkeeping at the moment because I've got to do 6 monthly returns to the wonderful FCA. If I didn't have a bookkeeper, I would spend weeks doing it myself. But the bookkeeper goes dick, 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 like that, because she knows what she's doing, and I've no idea. But she's self-employed, and that's the way I've decided to do that. But if you had a finance director who was doing all that for you, and suddenly he or she was no longer able to work, your business very soon would start to suffer. But the most likely is you've got somebody who's producing business for you. It's your turnover, so it's your marketing, it's your sales, it's your technical ability that is actually driving the sales and the turnover of your business. So this is what happens. You've got loss of profit. If you've got to replace that person, it's the training costs and the potential that you'd have to pay more than 100% of their salary to replace them in short notice. So if you go out into the market and say, I need this guy tomorrow, you'll pay top dollar because you've got to replace them very quickly. But then because they don't have the experience of your business in particular, but they might have experience in the sector. So there'll be a lag. So you've always got to consider the lag in turnover and profit, and then the replacement of that business, that person in the business, to rejuvenate your business and get it back where it was. So there's a bit of a double whammy. So you've got Christ, I was paying this guy 25 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand plus bonuses and all that sort of stuff. Effectively, the cost of my business was 75k, but he was giving 200k in turnover. What's the cost of your business? Well, potentially 200k, not 75. This is just saying, well, what happens if I have to go and borrow and to replace this person? Then it will affect your business credit rating. Banks change their lending policy. They say, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Smith, we can't lend you that much because we've changed our policies, and you're not successful enough, you're not big enough," or usual things that banks say. The economy might change. You might be in a downturn, and as I mentioned earlier about the guarantees that a director or a shareholder might have to put on a business loan, it might affect the personal security that is available to you. This is just a bit of a side thing about, well, how will a key person affect my business? And this is people's opinions about how the business or they will be affected by something happening to the top salesperson, the finance director, or whatever. That is what people think. So only 3% thought death or critical illness of a key person would affect the business. But that's not true. This is the facts. If anything happens to the key person in your business, most likely you'd cease trading very quickly indeed. So it's just showing you that considering the what ifs is quite important as far as looking after the people, not looking after the people, just looking after the business by looking at what could happen to the people. Have you written a will that takes account of your shareholding in your business? Because I have, surprisingly. Because if you are let's say you're a 50-50 shareholder in your business, and something happens to you, who gets your shares? Have you mentioned them in your will? So it's very important that you make it very clear what happens to the shareholding in the business. Because that then, if you said, okay, husband and wife business, my shares go to my husband and vice versa, that's not too much of a difficulty as long as you can do each other's jobs, or you can then employ somebody to do your job. But if you're unrelated, then let's say you two gentlemen were working together, so Dean and Dave were running a business together, and Dave pegs it. Sorry, Dave, I had to choose. I had to well, you're better looking, but you look older than him. So yeah. So one of your shareholders died. So that means that if you've written a will, all your shares go to your wife or go to your kids or whatever. He's then working with your wife, because yeah, exactly. But that is it. That is exactly the point. Because one thing is, your wife probably has got no idea what you do. She probably doesn't like Dean as much as you do. and when it comes to it, you don't want to work with your partner's wife. And so the thing is, you've lost control, or at least a proportion of it, because you're only a 50% shareholder. If you're a 30% shareholder or a 25% shareholder, really that's shitty, because you've got 75% of the shares against you anyway. So that means you've got no say whatsoever. And so then your wife owns 25% of these shares with no say at all in the business. That happens. But the 75% of the guys who are working their butt off to continue the business have to pay 25% dividends to the remaining to the inheritor of the shares. So that's what could happen, and the worst thing is, your wife could go and sell your shares to anybody else in this room. And that means the remaining 75% of people won't know who owns part of their business until it actually comes out that the shares have been sold. And you wouldn't think about it, well, I want that to happen anyway, because my wife doesn't understand the business. The dividends might be nice, but I prefer her to have a lump sum and be able to do something with that lump sum rather than having to deal with what's happening in the business, because she hasn't got the experience or the knowledge to do it. So this is basically repeating what I've just talked about. So do you want to work with your director's widow, son, daughter, boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever? It depends where the business has gone to, where the shares have gone to. So what can you do? And the easiest thing for a small business to do is something which is called a relevant life plan, which is basically, if anything happens to me, what happens? I want to be sure that my family is looked after, and you do a relevant life policy. It's just a life insurance policy that the company pays for, but the benefits go to the individual's family in a trust, automatic. So tax relieved on the premiums. So with an SME, if you're a limited company and you have life insurance, then if you're paying for it personally, you can actually convert it so that the company pays for it. You got almost unlimited amounts you can buy for. I've got £500,000 on my wife, who's a shareholder, and I've got £500,000 on myself, and it just falls into trust, so that I know that my wife's got the extra money, and I know that if anything happens to wife, I've got the extra money. So that means that you've paid for a benefit from the company, been tax relieved, it comes off your top line, goes into trust, so there's no inheritance tax issues either, because it's in the trust. The trust can then deal with that asset as it sees fit. So the trust can either give capital out of the trust, or it can make loans to the remaining spouse and family. It's quite useful, and because it's tax relieved, when you look at life insurance individually, you're paying it after taxed income, which could be 40% or 45%, and then you've got national insurance issues and all that sort of stuff. So it works out that you're almost getting 45% tax relief. And these are some of the costs of life insurance for any individual. Doesn't matter whether it's yourself or it's an individual within your business. But if you've got a young salesperson, then obviously it's going to cost you diddly squat to insure his or her life, so that you get £200,000 if he or she dies, and if he gets critical illness, again, the likelihood is they're still on your books. You still got to pay them because they're just ill. And so the effect on the business is even worse than if they die. But so insuring somebody for it is from a business point of view, it's worse. If you say, well, I'm going to pay you full salary if you're ill for a year, then I'll pay you for another year on 6 months, depending on what your HR policy is, it's going to cost you 150% of their salary over 2 years. For nothing. You don't get anything back because they're in bed. I'm cheerful. I love it. So what you need to take away from this is it's all doom and gloom, and it's going to cost you money, whichever way you look at it. As a small business, you will not get out of the dirt if you don't protect yourself in some way, whether that's individually or for your employees. And the costs of protecting yourself compared to the benefit, to the potential downside, are very, very small. Any questions? That's it, really. Useful? Interesting? Yeah? Ooh, I love the nods.
If you have to keep personal insurance, do you protect it if the staff just walk out one day, or if only if they get through?
No, No, unfortunately, yeah, I can't.
Put your hands
I,
over your
I
ears.
can't. I can't protect you if they walk out. Because they're going to walk. They're going to walk out because you've done something else, haven't you?
In dirt, aren't you? If they
Yeah.
walk out as you are, if they get seriously ill.
Yeah. No, if you do a Boris and they walk out, then no, I'm sorry, I can't protect you there.
It's interesting you talking like that because I think there's lots and lots and lots of business advice that people are given.
Mm.
But I think it's a real eye-opener of what you said. You know, we all need company insurance and public liability.
Mm.
But there's very little information on the
Yeah.
reality of when you grow and you take on stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you insure your car because you've got to,
Yes.
but it's a sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
You insure your house because if it falls down, you've got nowhere to live, and if somebody steals all your stereos and stuff like that, then you want to replace them.
Yeah.
But if your key employee suddenly keels over and dies, nobody thinks of insuring that person at all.
I actually stepped into a company last year, the family business, wife had no idea, and he got terminally ill and actually died. So I was brought in to sort of pick up the reins to run the company, and then ultimately closed it down. They were just a mess, and they had nothing set up at all.
Yeah, even when you have got something set up, even if you've set up
Yes.
procedures, it's still going to be a hell of a shock.
Yeah, yeah. It was the financial impact actually.
Yeah.
It was him, and so once he got ill, that's it. There's no
But if
recovery.
if it's a £500,000 turnover, but if you put two or 3 years worth of turnover into a policy, and it pays out £1.5 million, then effectively you're insuring a retirement, if you like, of your wife. So it's just something that you get 4 times death in service if you go and work for a company, and they take it into account when they pay you, because obviously it's a business expense it's an expense of running a business. So.
I've actually had experience that same thing you said.
No, you're here.
No, I work with a large company that are based locally. The director, unfortunately, he died. It got passed to his wife, who didn't know how to run that business at all. The staff left, all the fitting staff left.
Yeah.
They didn't want to work for somebody that didn't know what was going on. She then put her son-in-law in charge, who had never run this business before, and it literally ran into the ground.
And it folded. Yeah. So what business protection would have done in that situation would be it would have protected the whole business. It would have protected all the employees, and it would have protected the family.
And the staff that were left in there when the main director died were more than capable of actually running that business. And had they left that money for them to be able to buy out the
Yep, that's
they
it.
could have continued that and been the share.
Yeah.
So it is really valuable.
Yeah, we know what director share protection does is it just basically puts enough value in the hands of your fellow directors. So you three at the front again. Oh, sorry, I'll change it. Yeah, so you got 3 shareholders. So basically, you value the company, and you take out a third life insurance on each of you, but the owners of that policy are the other 2 directors. So Dean has a life policy for £100,000 because you estimate the company's worth 300 grand. Dean dies, and that means you 2 can then use the money that has gone into your names to buy Dean's shares off his family, because he would have given his shares to his wife and family. And what you do is you have a legal agreement written up called a cross-option agreement, which you can't say you must do this, you must do that, but most people would. You put in an option. If somebody says, I want to buy your shares, then the other person is then forced to do so, and vice versa. So basically you have an option in place that means that people can buy the shares from the estate of the remaining shareholder. That then puts the right amount of money in the right hands, so that the people who really matter, who will be the family of the deceased, can then walk away.
Out of all of this, just out of query, how many people have some kind of insurance for their business to replace them if they're okay?
Mhm.
It's definitely something to worth thinking about. And the second thing is, what if you're thinking about this is the first step? You're going to say come to you, but what things in what order should people be thinking? Because there's a lot you've said that's like, that and that and
Yeah.
that and that.
You got to think of who do you think needs financial protection in the business? Who's adding the value to the business, and who would you miss, and what would it cost you to replace that person, or what is the effect on the business? So if it was like your top salesman produces 50% of your turnover, then that's a dramatic effect if anything happens to that person. And it is then, well, the effect in turnover terms is massive, because it's 50% of my turnover. But how long is that going to last? Because then you go out and you recruit another top consultant salesperson who's in the business, but it might cost you more to do that. You might have to pay a higher salary, you might have a different bonus structure or whatever. So you've got to think about, well, what is the effect on my business, and what is the cost of that effect? In terms of shareholdings, then you've got to value the company, and you've got to think, well, how are we going to do this in terms of who's going to have the option to purchase these shares, or if it's a family business, then obviously you've got to think about how the business will continue in the event of somebody dying or somebody having a critical illness of some sort. So you got to, again, you think of, well, what is the effect of this happening on the business, in terms of, well, just in plain English, well, Christ, my sales are going to dive, or my finances are going to be a total mess, and I'm going to have to employ an accountant or somebody to come in and do it, or I'm going to have to employ a salesperson or another finance director or another whatever. And so you've got to think about what is the effect first of all, then what is the cost of that effect, and what time scale is that effect is likely to go over. So it might be, well, crumbs, the turnover is going to be hit and I'm going to fail. But if I had this amount of money, then I would be able to continue, but the effect would last 2 years. So you just got to think about what is going to happen to the business. Yeah.
You've talked a lot about limited companies with shareholders and that. Is there stuff that self-employed sole traders can do?
Not in terms of, well, you can say life insurance and stuff like that.
I'm talking about sort of like, can you insure against yourself?
Only through a personal policy.
Right.
So it'll be the same sort of thing. You say, well,
but you can get a similar.
yeah, you just do it personally, but you can't write it off. You can't write it off against your profits, because it's personal,
might be worth
limiting. Yeah,
company.
might be worthwhile. Yeah, but then obviously if you employ somebody, you're still doing the same thing as a company, because you're employing them. So you can take out key person insurance on them.
If you're engaging somebody else, even though you're a sole trader, you can still.
Yeah, you can still do things. Well, because if you employ somebody, you've still got to take out a pension for them.
Yeah.
So you can still do death in service and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can still do that. But mostly it's going to be limited companies, because self-employed people would they take out life insurance, or they should do. Because if you think, well, if I'm employed, then I get all these benefits from my company. But, so if you suddenly decide to go self-employed, then obviously you've got no benefits at all. You've got no long-term disability. You've got no pension. You've got no life insurance. No nothing. So you've got to factor that in to how much you need to earn to take effect of the fact you're going from self-employment from employment. So if you're earning 50k and you're employed, well, the cost of your pension, life insurance, and long-term disability is probably going to be another 10 grand. So you've got to factor that in. You need to earn at least 60 grand to actually stand still.
And are those tax efficient if you're putting that through your business?
If you put everything through your business, it's tax efficient. So things like your pension is off your top line, and if you put any life insurance for your employees, that can be through your top line. And then if you do the relevant life policy, that's through your business as well. So it all comes off your profit. So it's a lot of stuff that if you're self-employed, you do personally, and obviously with pension tax relief, then you can claim tax relief. But if you're 40% taxpayer, it can take up to a year to get the tax relief, because you've got to do it through your self-assessment. But if you do it through your company, the company pays the premiums, and it comes immediately out of the company profits.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark.
Okay.
Take a little break.